All right, so everything wrapping up for the New Year's and all that other stuff. What I've heard from as I'm like listening to other wrestling, podcasts and shows and stuff like that, whether it's Going in Raw with Steven Larson, which is a good podcast to listen to, Wrestle Talk, I was like another one to listen to and stuff like that, is that they basically been harping on Triple H and the whole women's division thing. And I'm not going to come out here and say that's been really great this year, nothing like that. Like that's not the part where I'm coming in defense of. Cause I was like, it has been lackluster, for a good portion, especially on Raw for the most part. SmackDown sort of had its like moments, and it really had picked up in the last couple months as well too. But it's more so the fact that it's where it's like it's given. I was like, it's really coming at Triple H, which been like the darling for the longest time and stuff like that, and basically saying like HBK is doing such a good job in the women's division. I'm not saying that he's not, with Jada Parker, Cora Jade, and all of them, coming back and stuff like that. But I do think that I was like, some of that is misleading on the fact that HBK is doing like such a good job, and Triple H is just sucking at his job as well too. For instance, I was like, HBK also got Stephanie Valkyrie, Julia, uh, Zarya. Like they just came in, but they already have names to them, so they already got some pop to them in a way that's like they already got the fanfare. All you got to do is basically just start throwing them in like the main events and stuff, which he has. Credit to him as well too. I was like Cora Jade, if it wasn't for her injury, I was like she pretty much be in all these spots that she always is. I was like, Lola Vice and Jade Parker basically been having like this whole like back and forth for a good while now, and then build up their name as well too. You got people like Sol Ruka and all that stuff, so they got people on there that's like, yeah, some have been built up, some had came in as well. They had Jordan Grace come through as well, that's also got her own name as well. So I was like, I was like, it's one of them things that I'm like, it's like in sports where it's just like, hey, you get a star player, and it's like it's like that star player is already a star player. Like if I gave somebody Steph Curry right now, I was like, how much can I really, how much is that being credit where just like you just can't, you just don't screw it up. I was like, still let Steph Curry go out there and put him in. I was like, let him over here shoot the ball. You just don't really just mess it up. So you getting into people that you need to get into, and also with the people that you help build up. I was like, guess what? You just don't screw it up. Whereas with Triple H, on the other hand, I think that he's been in a tougher spot because I think that for the year prior, him having to build up people and trying to get them to like put them on like such a pedestal now, that I'm like, hey, he had like, my thing is, I guess with it is that it's like he did try some things this year that I was like, some of it worked, some of it didn't, some of it that the fans didn't uh take that part in. Some of it was the fact that it's like you had to also build up these other people. And for a lot of people that get mad at sometimes the 50-50 booking, and it's just like, hey, sometimes people just gotta lose in order for you to build up people. I was like, he did that formula, and he was able to create Rhea as this big dominant as like bigger than life superstar. And he also sort of did it with Nia Jax as well too, who we see got that on SmackDown. And guess what? All those people that everybody's complaining about at the women's division, all this other stuff, I was like, they had to fall by the wayside for. I was like, the thing and that's what was like aggravating me, is that fact that we're gonna like be absent of this and act like he didn't do anything. And it's just like and I'm like, sometimes I'm like, things just sometimes don't click. I was like, he has faults in the men division, but we don't pay attention to the faults he have in the men division because one, some of the stuff that do click, like the Drew and CM Punk feud is like so high. I was like, he was able to nail the Cody Rhodes whole thing. So I was like, that was a win. Gunther with his King of the Ring, that was a win. Damian Priest, that was a win. That I was like, that it sometimes takes a while to be like, oh, you know what, that Chad Gable thing didn't work out that well. The Wyatts ain't really ain't really doing what they necessarily need to do right here. I was like, Alpha Academy is just sort of floundering in the wind right now. Carmelo Hayes, like he has some faults with the men division too. We just don't see it that way because with women already are sort of already getting the short end of the stick with stuff like that. So we sort of to give them a little bit more look, and I was like, not saying that we shouldn't, because I'm like, granted we should, because I was like, there have been that disparity between the men and the women, but at the same time, it is sometimes that it's like, I was like, you can sometimes overdo it as well too with those that are also sometimes in unfortunate situations. But I'm like, for instance, I was like, most like you look at some of the women, I'm like Zelina, who is a crowd favorite, but I'm like, she had to fall by Rhea Ripley. Zoe Stark, when we was sort of like trying, like she was sort of having some momentum. Guess what? She fell by Rhea's wayside as well too. And I was like, you think about it, I was like Raquel Rodriguez before she had to go away for her medical situation. I was like, the only person that really during that time that also got built up was really Nia, and then she also fell to Rhea, but she was able to rebound once she was able to sort of get into the whole Queen of the Ring thing, and she's been dominant since. But I'm like, guess what? Because of her, Naomi's getting her ass beat. Bailey's getting beat. I was like, Tiffany's gonna have her chance to shine over her right now. I mean, at some point, but right now she's over here just getting, kind of put down. But that's how they're building a story with it. And I get it for the people that's like, the women haven't really had a story. They really just had feuds and stuff like that, or rivalries and stuff like that. But I'm at the same time, I'm like, yeah, but I was like, that doesn't mean that there's not nothing there. Or I was just saying, like, just because there had been a story this year, which there has been, it's been Rhea and Liv, and people are sort of like getting tired of that. Granted, it's been like also injuries with Rhea as well too. I was like, I don't think we know to the level of like how much it was real or happenstance or whatever, but that has been a thing that has happened, and there's no telling if that was that, since SummerSlam when they broke up, if they would have going to be able to carry this all the way to WrestleMania anyway. Because I was like, I just feel like that's just a long time to try to carry this particular. Feel like even Drew and CM Punk even had to end. Like, yes, they still got this little budding thing, but you see they haven't had any interaction. They're still not going to really meet. Like I expect Rumble, they'll probably like run into each other again in a way that's like, oh my God, these two that had a heat a few, but I think they're gonna keep them away. He doing this whole thing with Seth, and he doing the whole thing with Bloodline, So, but I was like, the Rhea and Liv thing is their storyline, and guess what? When it's a pretty dominant storyline, something fall by the wayside. We see it with the Bloodline that we seen how long it took, where the Bloodline was slow early in the year, then it finally picked up. But because of that, SmackDown was sort of dead in the water for the longest time because Bloodline couldn't go. So that's why with a lot of this, I'm like, I think we're over exaggerating, overdoing it with the whole thing of like, he has basically seemed like he failed the women's division, and I think it's really because it's one of those damn you do, damn you don't things, where it's because the women have been pooped on I was like poo-pooed on. That's I was like, you know what? Bad choice of word considering the situation from before. But because they haven't been able to be as prominent as men, that you are going to push a little bit harder, being like, yo, they need to get their chance and stuff like that, while also probably ignoring, it's one of them things where it's like, you don't want to act like, hey, like they're doing better. That doesn't mean that it's like it should be great or that you should stop trying to fight for more. But at the same time, you can acknowledge that it's like he tried, like Pure Feud in the Collective. I feel like he was trying and he is trying, but I was like, let's also be honest. Like the crowd, the crowd is not really being receptive of him, and it's not like they didn't try. Like they're having their whole battle and stuff like that with Party Girls. I mean, Candice Carter and Katana, and then Lyra Valkyria and Zelina, and I guess in time for that brief time. That they took them all out. They was a dominant faction, taking them all out, and that really wasn't going anywhere. And then they sort of they were doing the 50-50 booking with him a little bit, and then basically the good guys ended up winning sort of that. But he did try to show them off as being a dominant thing, and people were receptive. I think now they're starting to get a little bit, but I was like, Shayna doesn't really get they don't even get the boost. Sonya, I think, actually does get a little bit of actually like fanfare. I don't think Zoe really does. I feel like ever since she sort of really lost to Rhea, they really didn't have anything for her to do to push her after she had the whole thing with Trish and stuff like that. And I think they just, I think that they just never have booked Shayna. Like, she still does her thing, but she's never going to get to her NXT thing because of how she was booked before Triple H. That's what you got to take in a lot of this, is that he still is trying to figure out. And guess what? Now at this point, some of the people are just where they at. That is sort of stuck in there. But I'm like, with them getting a mid-card championship, I'm like, hey, I think this will help them turn around, because now you can tell stories, and now you can tell stuff that's with the title and a little bit without the title. We had Miss Shin with Chelsea Green. That was a thing for a while. And to be honest, they're having a little bit of a feud for the whole year as well too. It's not necessarily a story, but I'm like, they've had beef throughout the whole year. They're still continuing it now with the U.S. Championship. So to me, I really do think that I was like, yes, it hasn't been good this year with the women, but I think this also kind of is also poo-pooing him on the fact that it's like, hey, he did try some things. Some things just didn't work out in a way that I feel like y'all wanted to or whatever. And I think some of that is not just on trips for that. I was like, because I was like, there's been times too where I was like, hey, like after I was like he didn't strike really as much as he needed to probably on Lyra, but also I was like, but he did insert her into the pure fusion thing, and that just didn't pull down to anything really at the same time either. I was like, it took a minute for people to also, I was like, he tried to do the thing with Becky, and that worked for a minute, but then it just sort of like went away once Becky went away. And I was like, it took a minute for people, I think, to really get back on Lyra as well too, because you can tell the difference between the crowd that does the woo and the ones that don't. So I was like, I think that we cannot also fail to see that he did not, that he didn't try. I was like, how he did. I was like, I will say probably I think the little small window, like Maxine Dupree, also you could probably throw in there as well too, because to me, I was like, there was a chance there. I think, kind of like, she actually does get fan reaction in a way as well too. So I was like, I think a little bit of it's overblown. I was like, I don't think there's actually any context to when I hear people talking about it in a way that's like, because I'm like, hey, you can want the right stuff for the women and stuff like that, where you want them to have the same stuff as men, but you also don't have to just, I was like, you don't also have to pity them. You also don't have to act like woe is them with a lot of things either. I was like, and I get it. It's one of them tricky things, because it's like, you do have the history of it that sort of makes it where it's like, we got to give them the same opportunity as well too. But then you also don't want to just belittle them by also being like, here you go, just because at the same time. You got to find a really good balance, and I think that's really hard to do. That a lot of people, it's easy for you to say of just like, oh, give them the same thing as the men, when at the same time it's like, yeah, but we're also not, I was like, but also I'm not going to do it in a way that also to a detriment to the whole thing as well too. But anyway, that's just, I guess, my little 2% of the milk that's left in the bottle. Anyway, let me know what y'all think. Do you think some of it's overblown or whatever? I was like, I know some of this also like a topic with like the winner of the Royal Rumble gets the main event, and the reason I've heard like that is not really necessarily like the winner of the main event, Royal Rumble getting the main event. Like, yeah, sure, that's a thing too, but it's really just because it's like, so the women can have a main event match. And I was like, I do think that that's Royal Rumble winner get that. But also, I do think that the story should be precedent over it, because I was like, what about somebody in Elimination Chamber had a better story than Royal? I was like, and granted, that's creative. You can make the whole, I was like, you can put more energy into it. So also at the same time, I was like, I can also rebuttal to my own argument. So anyway, let me know what y'all guys think. How do y'all all feel about this whole thing? And until then, peace out.